Everything's costing more these days. The price rises are relentless, but gardening can come to the rescue if you know what to grow for the best returns. Hi, I'm Ben, and today I'm going to share my pick of the crop to combat inflation. These are all high value crops that will trim the most from your grocery bill, saving you money. What are they? Well, let's count them down. Salad leaves of all types should comprise a regular feature of any diet, and they're incredibly easy to grow. Those pre-bagged salads you get in the grocery store aren't very good value for money, and it's because the atmosphere inside the packaging is often treated to extend the shelf life. Of course, as a gardener, none of that matters. Grow your own salad bar and you can pop out to cut your own leaves as and when they're needed. This is my salad bed here. It's early in the season, so things are still quite early on, but you can see the lettuces I planted a few weeks ago are coming along okay. And if you look over there, I've got some delicious pea shoots coming through. Can't wait to tuck into those. Look, I know I've got a habit of banging on about chard, so I will keep this brief, but please don't forget to include 1 or 2 rows of beautiful leafy chard for many, many months of fresh spinach-like greens. Okay, so berries aren't strictly speaking one crop, but the concept holds across all of them. They're really abundant, they cost an absolute fortune in the grocery store, and once you've planted them, they will keep on cropping for years to come. The cheapest way to buy them is bare root, when the plants are dormant in winter. It's a bit late in the season to find them bare rooted now, but you can buy them as ready to plant potted plants too. These raspberries went in last month and I'm looking forward to good things. And this blueberry has burst into leaf with gusto. It's been in this pot for about 1.5 years now, so I reckon it's time to pot it on into a slightly larger pot. So let's do that now. I'm just going to use a pot that's a little bit wider and deeper than the one it's been in, and I'm using an ericaceous potting mix, which is just a potting mix that's acidic, which is what blueberries need to grow. Most berries will grow best in full sunshine, though some, like my raspberries and indeed gooseberries here, will grow quite well in dappled shade. The trick though is to keep on picking them to keep those delicious berries coming. You can freeze berries, it's so easy to do. Just spread them out individually onto parchment-lined trays, pop them in the freezer till they're frozen solid, bring them out, then decant them into bags or containers to then pop back into the freezer. Who doesn't love sweet corn? Pick them fresh, smother them in butter and pepper and then crunch down onto them. Just delicious. But for this list, I'd like to propose a different type of corn for drying and grinding up into cornmeal. If you've got plenty of space, this is a great way to boost the pantry, and you can make your own tortillas, corn dogs or cornbread. Some varieties of corn can be eaten fresh as sweet corn and then left to dry for grinding. But what we're really looking for grinding, the best ones are dent type of corns. If you're unsure, just check the packet description to make sure it is suitable for this purpose. It's warmed up lately, so I reckon it's time to sow my corn for this year. I'm just going to sow them into modules as usual, just 1 seed per plug, and that way there's no need to sort of remove any excess seedlings because most of these should germinate, I reckon. They'll be grown on in the warmth indoors at around room temperature and then hardened off later on to plant outside. Now, when it comes to planting the corn, I'll be planting it in a block formation, and that's to aid wind pollination so that each cob is full of kernels. With the corn for grinding, I'm going to leave the cobs on the plant to dry out to a crisp there and then bring them indoors to continue drying. They'll then get shucked and the kernels stored in airtight jars until it's time to grind them up into cornmeal. Next up on our list might be a bit of a surprise. It's mushrooms. Really? Well, yes, and especially oyster mushrooms, which are really expensive in the shops, but pretty easy to grow. The easiest way to grow mushrooms is just to use a kit like this. Now this one I've just harvested and I'll spray it repeatedly to get it nice and wet again, and I should get another flush or even 2. Now this is the very simplest kit to use, But if you want to save even more money, use a kit that employs straw pellets to which you add your spawn. That's just the seeds that start the mushroom off. I've done a video on both these types of kits and there's a link to them in the video description down below. The cost of herbs is insane. Why, when you can grow them so easily? Now this is my compact herb bed. You've already met the elephant garlic here, but there's also a lot more going on here, and it's all been propagated from cuttings or split up plants. We've got thyme here, mint and rosemary, all taken from cuttings last summer. Then we've got parsley, grown from a grocery store bought pot that was then just split apart to grow on, and then oregano from a plant in the garden that was also split up. And joining it will be some basil shortly. And here's some parsley that I split up a couple of weeks ago from a grocery store bought pot. And you can see they're coming along really well. A few leaves have died back, I've clipped those off, but we've now got really healthy, strong green growth in the middle of the plant. These will go out once they've filled up the pots in about 2 weeks' time. If you'd like to see a video on this split up, repot and grow on method of growing herbs, then I'll pop a link to that in the video description below. What I love about growing herbs is how easy they are to grow and the fact they give such a boost to meal times. They're also terribly good for you too, of course. Then there's the fact that they can be stored for use later on, whether freezing in ice cubes or drying to flake into airtight jars or using to create infused vinegars and oils. Grow a range of herbs and save more than just pennies. So I mentioned that garlic makes an excellent companion to potatoes, and that's because their pungent pong helps to dissuade aphids, so it's a great companion. And as it just so happens, potatoes are next on our list. Now I read an article recently that said that famous British staple of fish and chips is going to rocket in price because everything that goes into it is also skyrocketing, and that includes the humble potato. Who'd have thought it? It seems that potatoes are no longer as cheap as chips. Well, these are my potatoes and they've all been sprouted or chitted already. You can see that they've got slightly small shoots, but shoots nonetheless. The soil is nice and warm now. It's not cold to the touch, so it's time to get on and plant them. I'm going to plant them about 18 inches or 45 centimetres apart, and they're going in about 15 centimetres or 6 inches deep and 30 centimetres or a foot distant within the row. And these garlic will help defend them from those aphids. When you're planting, of course, do make sure that you get the shoots, the little green shoots, pointing upwards. And then once they sprout, I'll be hilling them or earthing them up. And that simply means banking up the soil around the shoots so that they're covered. And what that does is it gives more volume, if you like, for the tubers to grow into, so you don't get those unsightly green potatoes. Go garlic! This breath-bashing bulb makes it into about 90% of the recipes I cook. Too much? Whatever. I love it. Now, this garlic is going to be grown alongside my potatoes because it makes a great companion plant. It gets very wet in my garden, so I started these off in the greenhouse in pots. Didn't need to be in a greenhouse, but just to keep them protected from the pigeons and deer and so on. And these guys here are my elephant garlic. They produce absolute whoppers of a bulb. Can't wait to tuck into those. With all of my garlic, I like to enjoy some fresh and then cure and store some to enjoy later on in the year. But another plan for any excess garlic I've got is to turn it into garlic granules or garlic powder. To make a garlic powder, just peel the individual cloves, then cut them up into thin slices. Spread them out on a tray and dehydrate at 150 Fahrenheit or 65 Celsius. Once dry, whiz them up in a spice grinder or food processor, then store in airtight jars, where they should keep for at least a year. In my local grocery store, zucchini or courgettes come in packs of 3 and they cost quite a bit, even during the growing season. This is a famously prolific fruit, so I'm not sure why they cost so much. I grow them and they keep on cropping, coming again and again and again, and I just can't get rid of them. I'm pretty sure I annoy my neighbours by trying to thrust them onto them. Never mind. I'm going to do the same this year because look what I've got. I've got two varieties, a beautiful ribbed courgette or zucchini and a lovely yellow fruited type. I can't wait, they're going to be so pretty. I'm going to plant them out into ground that's been really enriched with loads of organic matter, and then it's the usual trick. Keep them well watered, help maybe with a spot of hand pollination early on in the summer, and then pick and pick, and pick again. We can't not have tomatoes on our list, but decent tasting, vine ripened tomatoes cost a premium in the shops, probably because they have to be grown for a bit longer and transported with extra care, but the gardener doesn't need to worry about all of that. This year I'm growing 3 types of tomato, a paste type for making sauces, a delicious little red cherry type for snacking and for salads, and a big, bold beefsteak tomato called burlesque. Let's pot them on because they're ready to transplant into their own pots. These are the burlesque here. And with tomatoes, the old trick, you probably know this already, is to set them right up to their lowest leaves because they will produce extra roots along their stem. And it means that if you do get a slightly longer seedling, it gives that extra support. So you'll get stockier plants as an end result of it. Once the tomatoes have grown on and there's no danger of frost, most will be going outside. I'm not too worried about tomato blight. My plants got whacked with blight last year, but the harvested fruits that we managed to save were turned into chutneys and fried green tomatoes, and many of them did actually ripen. The rest will be grown inside the greenhouse here in these straw bales, which will be having their second year, and I'll be popping basil plants in there to help with companion planting. Tomatoes can be a bit slow to start in my cool climate, so I will be doing everything possible to help them to speed things along, including artificially pollinating the flowers with an electric toothbrush. But once they get going, they crop and crop and crop, so it's a real winner. I'll be sure to keep on picking them, and then any excess will be turned into all manner of beautiful tomato sauces and passatas. Beans of all types are remarkably prolific, but for me it's climbing beans that take home the trophy. And I love 2 particular types, runner beans and beautiful French or fine beans. I've got to sow some right now actually, it's the time of year, and I'm going to sow some borlotti beans. These are fantastic beans because they can be picked fresh to enjoy as delicious green beans and then left to mature all the way till the pods dry out to harvest dry like these to store for winter. These are really beautiful speckled seeds. They're so pretty. I'm going to sow 2 per plug tray, about 1 inch to 2 inches, that's say 3 to 4, 5 centimetres deep. And I'm going to sow 2 per plug, and then I can thin to leave the strongest in there. There they all are. Don't they look pretty? And then just cover them over. I'm going to germinate them in the warmth, probably indoors actually, on a windowsill, and then once they're up, they'll come out here to grow on. I'm going to plant most of my beans against these beautiful arches, but I also love traditional bean supports too, so let's make one of those right now. I'm just finishing off my bean frame here with 2 parallel rows of string, and what that does is it just helps the beans sort of latch on and find their way up. Now, why do climbing beans make it into our top 10? Well, I think it's fairly obvious they're very prolific. The more you pick, the more they come, and over the course of the summer, they will give you handfuls and handfuls of delicious beans. And then what about all the excess? Well, it's easy. They're so easy to freeze. Just simply cook them for 1 to 2 minutes in boiling water, plunge them into cold water to stop them cooking, and then freeze them. And they'll last throughout the winter months. Furthermore, and this is something I really recommend, is dilly beans. That's beans canned in a sort of pickling solution with dill, garlic and chilies. It gives a really quite sensational feast, let me tell you. So by growing these delicious climbing beans, I'll have fresh beans to pick as and when needed, beans for freezing to enjoy throughout the winter months, and delicious dilly beans to enjoy throughout the year. I've done a video on canning with that recipe for dilly beans, and I'll pop it in the video description below. Have I mentioned everything you thought I'd mention, or is there an inflation-busting crop you'd highly recommend? Well, if there is, please do share what it is in the comments below. It's been a real pleasure having you in the garden today and sharing all these little ideas with you. If you've enjoyed it, all I ask in return is you drop this video a thumbs up and subscribe if you haven't already, of course. I'll catch you next time.